Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Abhineet Shukla and with me is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to begin 3-day visit to Russia on Wednesday. India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla meets Afghan Ambassador to India Farid Mamounzeh. Passenger plane carrying 28 people goes missing in Russia's Far East. BRICS countries resolve to enhance academic collaboration in the 8th meeting of BRICS education ministers. In Wimbledon tennis, Aryna Sabalenka beats Ons Jabeur to reach her first ever Grand Slam semi-final. In Euro 2020 football, Italy and Spain clash tonight in the first semi-final at Wembley, London. Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar inaugurates Virtual India Pavilion at 74th Cannes Film Festival. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and also to help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask. Maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing. Focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact National Helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, will begin a 3-day official visit to Russia from Wednesday. During the visit, the External Affairs Minister will meet his counterpart, Mr. Sergei Lavrov. Discussions are expected to cover the entire range of bilateral issues, including cooperation in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as exchange of views on various regional and international issues. The External Affairs Minister will also meet Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Yuri Borisov. Mr. Borisov is his counterpart for the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation. He will also have a meeting with the chairman of the State Duma Committee on International Affairs, Mr. Leonid Slutsky. Dr. Jaishankar will deliver a speech on India-Russia ties in a changing world at the prestigious Primakov Institute of World Economy and International Relations in Moscow. The visit will be in continuation of the frequent high-level visits between the two sides. The Russian Foreign Minister visited New Delhi in April this year. The External Affairs Ministry said in a statement that the visit will further strengthen the special and privileged strategic partnership between the two countries. India's Chief of Army Staff, General Manoj Naravane, called on General Sir Mark Carleton Smith, Chief of General Staff, British Army, and discussed issues of joint military cooperation. The Army Chief is on a 2-day visit to the UK, which includes meetings with the Secretary of State for Defence, Ben Wallace. During the second leg of his Europe tour, General Naravane will be holding important discussions with the Chief of Defence Staff and the Chief of Staff of the Italian Army.
The Government of India said on Tuesday that the country is registering a significant decline in active caseloads and fresh cases of COVID-19. Briefing the media in New Delhi today, Joint Secretary of Health and Family Welfare Lav Agrawal has said that the recovery rate has reached 97.2% due to continued efforts of containment and restriction strategies. Mr. Agrawal said that the spread of infection is concentrated in a limited geography and is spreading in a localized manner. However, Mr. Agrawal observed that people travelling to hill stations are not following COVID-appropriate behaviour. He cautioned that the government can reverse the ease in restrictions again if protocols are not complied with. On the vaccination front, India has crossed yet another milestone in the COVID vaccination drive as the total vaccination coverage has crossed the 36 crore mark. The ministry has termed it as India's landmark achievement in the fight against COVID-19. This is All India Radio, giving you the world news.
The centre is disseminating awareness of national helpline numbers for the benefit of citizens during the COVID-19 pandemic. The helpline number of the Health and Family Welfare Ministry is 1075. The child helpline number is 1098. For senior citizens of Delhi, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the helpline number is 14567. The helpline number of National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, for psychological support is 08046110007. Ayush COVID-19 counselling helpline number is 14443 and MyGov WhatsApp help desk number is 9013151515.
Welcome back to the World News. India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla on Tuesday met Afghan Ambassador to India Farid Mamounzeh. The ambassador briefed the Foreign Secretary on the security situation in Afghanistan. Mr. Shringla assured the Afghan side of India's long-term commitment towards peace and prosperity in Afghanistan. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the withdrawal of the US forces from Afghanistan. In conversation are Pranay Kothasane, Deputy Director of Takshashila Institution, Bangalore, and writes regularly on India and Afghanistan relations.
The withdrawal of the US forces from the Bagram Air Base last week brings us a step closer to the end of 20 years of military engagement of the US and its allied forces in Afghanistan. A generation has grown up in the stripe-torn country. Let me begin by asking you, Pranay, to walk us through the key developments which have brought us to this situation we are witnessing currently.
Yeah, a few things to understand, right? So why Bagram why is it important? So first thing, it is the largest military base of the US in Afghanistan, and the fact that it is being vacated sends a clear signal that the US is moving out. Second point, we should remember that withdrawal of American forces is actually happening since 2011. In fact, in 2010, the process started of the International Security Assistance Force, which was the force which came in after 9/11. That started handing over its operational authority to the Afghan National Security Forces. And by 2014, that process ended and a lot of district control was transferred to ANDSF, etc. And in the ISAF actually then became a resolute support force. So its role changed and its role became more of supporting the Afghan forces, whether in air support, whether maintenance of various equipment, etc. So that was way back in 2014. And now what is happening is that under this resolute support force, the American contingent, which is the biggest part of it, is sort of drawing down further. So that's broad thing that has happened. If you want to look at the failure points, Pawan, there are many failure points. The first and foremost failure point itself is the Doha Agreement, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and how that is an abject surrender, I would call it. The second failure, I would say, is just the fact that ISAF, which we discussed, it handed over to an underprepared ANDSF, and there was a lack of human capital training, etc., which sort of Taliban utilized in the long run. But the original failure point of the US was to back the Pakistani military jihadi complex. This is duplicitous game. So after 9/11, through some strange calculations, Pakistan actually became a US ally in the global war on terrorism, while also providing shelter to the likes of Osama bin Laden and the Taliban leadership. Though over the last 5 years, US has come around and it has understood Pakistan's game, but I think Afghanistan is still bearing the consequences of this strategic blunder which started way back in 2001.
You referred to the Doha Agreement, which was a significant milestone in this saga. Could you, for the benefit of our listeners, highlight the salient aspects of this agreement?
If I take the big picture, I would say that it was sort of a moral victory for Taliban and their backers in Pakistan, whereas it came across as a Vietnam moment for the US. Now, why do I say so? One, first of all, this agreement is signed by the US and by the Taliban. No representation of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, which is the state of Afghanistan as we know it, right? So they are totally sidelined. So the agreement goes to great length to say that Taliban is not a state. So if you see the agreement's title, it is said it is signed by the US and the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, which is not recognized by the United States as a state and is known as the Taliban. So it goes at great lengths at every mention of Taliban to say that it is not a state. But the damage was done, right? The fact that you had US coming to the same table as Taliban without the legitimate government of Afghanistan even being a party to this agreement shows that Taliban had won. So what it said is that broadly it said that US committed to a full withdrawal over 14 months in exchange of the Taliban saying that, we give guarantees that we will not allow Afghan soil to be used against America and its allies in the future. Now, that's as far as guarantees by terrorist groups can go, right? And we had written earlier at that point as well that to give any serious consideration to guarantees by a terrorist group that it would not support other terrorist groups, I think it indicates short-sightedness, incompetence, or perhaps both. Also, you should remember that one of the main points in the Doha Agreement was that 5,000 Taliban prisoners will be released by the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in return of Taliban returning 1,000 prisoners. I mean, you had commitment given on the behalf of a party which was not even in the agreement itself. Final point in the agreement was that there would be an intra-Afghan dialogue, and that intra-Afghan dialogue would talk about a comprehensive peace agenda. So it was just about starting and having this as a part of the dialogue, but whether that will play out or not is anyone's guess.
Now, the intra-Afghan talk that you just mentioned is something that India has constantly supported. India has consistently called for a peace process which is Afghan-owned, Afghan-led, and Afghan-controlled. Now, to what extent has Afghanistan progressed on this front?
I think within Afghanistan there is a recognition that there should be some discussions. We've suffered way too long, and at least they believe that certain elements of the Taliban are Afghans after all. So there is no way to get around this but to talk and thrash out a solution which is acceptable to a large number of parties. We should also remember that Taliban does not sort of enjoy a vast popularity in Afghanistan now. It is a very powerful military movement, but it is not a national movement. It does not have significant presence in the north, not in the urban areas. Also, after 2001, the world has changed. A lot of modernity things have changed in Afghanistan as well, and they wouldn't want to go back to what Taliban inflicted between 1996 and 2001. So there is, on one hand, there is recognition that Taliban has to be a part of the solution in one way or the other. On the other hand, I would also say that the current way, the way it was forced down upon the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan sort of came across as this talk. The Doha Agreement was Pakistan owned and US controlled rather than Afghan owned and Afghan controlled.
Clearly, there has been a marked increase in violence ever since the US forces drawdown has accelerated. How far is this correlation a causation, or is it just a matter of perception as the international gaze is upon Afghanistan currently?
No, I think there is definitely a relationship. So there is a very nice quote by an author on this, that US has all the watches but Taliban has all the time, right? So that is how the story has played out even here. So once it was clear that the US is going to go out sooner rather than later, the Taliban just played the longer game. And remember, it was aided and abetted by Pakistan in all this, right? So they reduced the violence for some time. And when the withdrawal of the American forces started, way back in 2014, they started increasing violence. So in fact, there is a very nice research paper which has come out only recently, and it indicates that there is a signaling effect involved. What the Taliban does is it strategically reduces violence so that this transition happens, and once they are ready to withdraw forces, it increases violence.
Now, you alluded to the Afghan National Defense Security Force, the ANDSF, earlier in the interview. What is the status of its preparedness right now, and how far has the US contributed in making Afghanistan self-sufficient in defending its country and its people?
Yeah. So, interestingly, a lot of times people think that it is the lack of financial financial resources which is constraining them. But that I don't think is the case. It is not that there is a lack of financial resources which is constraining them. In fact, the problems are elsewhere. So at current status, I would say that it is a very capable force to prevent takeover of urban areas. It is equipped enough. It has a special forces unit. It has a small but effective air force as well. So it can prevent takeover of urban areas from the Taliban. Okay, but it is not strong enough to defeat the insurgents. The second point, I would say that what has restricted its progress is the fact that one, there has been an obvious problem of corruption. The money flowed in, but it didn't translate into a lot of capability generation of ANDSF. Money was siphoned off by certain warlords, etc. So that happened, and it will happen in sort of a lot of conflict-ridden areas. But secondly, there was also a lack of human capital development. So what you see is there is a poor leadership skills. There was lack of adequate training. So in essence, what you see is that there are money put in, but there was not enough effort put in to develop human capital, to actually train the people to take over leadership positions. Remember, all this happened very suddenly, right? So there was not much effort put in. There was a great report done by a US based agency itself, and they put out 10 major issues with the ANDSF. The major highlight of that was the fact that there is not enough leadership training, not enough training, for example, on how to do counter-terrorism operations, how to plan, how to do logistics management, etc. So a lot of armies is a lot about logistics, planning, leadership, right? And those were the soft skills, but very essential soft skills which were missing, and that is sort of hurting now.
Okay, so India in its engagement with Afghanistan has always emphasized on the aspect of capacity building. Could you elaborate a bit more on how India's engagement with Afghanistan compares with that of the US?
India focused a lot on economic development and training and political development as well, right? Because unlike the US, India's involvement with Afghanistan has no end date. India and Afghanistan will remain neighbors even with the US or without US being in the picture, right? So that's why a lot of Indian engagement was on the economic front. So for example, you would have heard about the Salma Dam, you would have heard about the Indira Gandhi Hospital, you would have heard about the parliament construction, the Garland Road across Afghanistan's major cities. All of that had Indian involvement, So India's involvement was focused on the economic front. There was also the Chabahar port, which India is working on in Iran, and that is a very strategic port for Afghanistan because currently it is dependent on one route through Karachi and second through Tajikistan. So there are not many access routes to a landlocked country like Afghanistan, right? So Chabahar access to the Gulf port of Chabahar through Iran would have helped Afghanistan a lot. So India still continues to work on that front, right? And we should not forget the people part in all this, right? It's not just about constructing buildings and things, but the fact that a lot of students from Afghanistan come to study in India, and India has a lot of student positions on scholarships for students from Afghanistan. Also a medical help, because of the lack of medical facilities in Afghanistan, there is a lot of people who come to India and they are given visas to sort of access India's medical facilities. On the ANDSF front, India gave Mi-25 helicopters. There were 4 helicopters given to Afghanistan. There was a lot of training for several military personnel which was given because India has, as I told you, they lack the counter-terrorism experience, and India does have that, right? So there was a lot of training which happened there.
Now, building on this, what are India's interests in Afghanistan and beyond under this imminent reality of the US exit?
There are 3 assumptions on which India's current Afghanistan policy is based. One is that there is an overwhelming agreement in India that India's interests lie in building a strong, resilient state in Afghanistan. Okay, and that's why India has distinguished itself as an actor which is focused on economic development and capacity building. Second interest is that almost everyone in the Indian strategic establishment agrees that an Afghanistan which is completely controlled or piloted by Islamabad is not good for the Indian interest. So that's why India's interest lies in building a capable Afghanistan which can also stand up to Pakistan and not have stooges of Pakistan in Kabul, right? So that's the second point. The third point and third major interest of India is to restrict the Taliban to parts of the south perhaps and deny them a territory space in Loya Paktia areas in the east which have been places of really hotbeds of anti-Indian activity in the past. So a lot of these Lashkar-e-Taiba, JEM people train with the Taliban. It's not a separate group who are, totally independent of these. It's a mix of a lot of these elements.
Now, coming to the end of our discussion, how would you view the situation developing in the future in Afghanistan?
Unfortunately, I think there is a lot of turmoil in the short term at least, and that is perhaps a return of a civil war. And even if even if the Taliban were to take over Kabul, perhaps even overthrow the current government, it will face a lot of resistance from forces which are opposed to Taliban in the north, in the west, some in the south as well. So there is already news of some regional warlords taking up arms to resist the Taliban. So that is sort of taking shape even as we speak, and that is what Taliban will be faced against. So unfortunately, the idea of peace still remains elusive with US withdrawal or without US withdrawals. So in the short term, there is a lot more turmoil is how I see it.
Thank you, Pranay, for providing us with a very lucid big picture on one of the most vexed issues of our times. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pawan. Thanks for having me.
So listeners, that was Pranay Kothastane speaking to All India Radio on the US withdrawal and its implications in Afghanistan and beyond.
Education ministers from the 5 BRICS countries virtually signed a joint declaration on Tuesday to further strengthen academic and research collaboration in higher education, technical and vocational education and training. In the 8th meeting of the BRICS education ministers that was held as part of the 13th BRICS summit being hosted by India, ministers deliberated on 2 themes. These are leveraging digital and technological solutions for ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and enhancing research and academic collaboration. The ministers agreed on facilitating the mobility of students and faculty among BRICS partner states, besides encouraging joint and dual degrees between higher education institutions in BRICS countries. Chairing the meeting, Minister of State for Education Sanjay Dhotre said that India acknowledges the concerted efforts being made by students, teachers, parents, communities and governments across the world to mitigate the effects of the pandemic and build back a more resilient education system. He underscored the importance of multilateral cooperation, especially among the BRICS nations, for harnessing the full potential of education. A passenger plane carrying 28 people went missing in the Russian Far East. According to reports citing local officials, the AN-26 aircraft lost contact with air traffic control shortly before it was due to land in the settlement of Polana in the north of the remote Kamchatka Peninsula. The plane was flying from the regional center Petropavlovsk. Reports say the plane crashed into the sea and a signal from its black box has been detected. Officials said 22 passengers, including 1 child, were on board, as well as 6 crew members.
Now moving on to sports, Aryna Sabalenka ends Ons Jabeur's brilliant run with a 6-4, 6-3 victory to reach her first ever Grand Slam semi-final. The number 2 seed looked to be in explosive mood on the center court as she wrapped up the match in straight sets. In the other quarter-final, Karolina Pliskova passed Victoria Golubic 6-2, 6-2 on the number 1 court in 1 hour and 21 minutes. Meanwhile, in the men's singles, Hubert Hurkacz defeats Daniil Medvedev in 5 sets to reach his first Grand Slam quarterfinal. He will face Roger Federer next. In Eurocup Football 2020, Italy will clash with Spain in the first semi-final at the Wembley late tonight. England will take on Denmark in the second semi-final on Wednesday night. Italy beat Belgium 2-1 in the first quarter-final to extend their unbeaten run to 32 matches. Spain advanced by beating Switzerland 3-1 on penalties after a 1-1 draw. England crushed Ukraine 4-0 in Rome to set up a last-four clash against Denmark. Denmark overcame the Czech Republic 2-1 to make it to the last four.
With only a few days remaining for the start of the Tokyo Olympics, All India Radio brings a special series on India's medal prospects at the sporting extravaganza.
B. Sai Praneeth, the only Indian to challenge in men's singles badminton at the Tokyo Olympics, has the power to win a medal by excelling in his sport. Praneeth was born on 10th October 1992 in Hyderabad. During his school days, he covered a distance of 18 kilometers and then took a 4-hour-long train journey for his training. His hard work soon paid off, and Sai Praneeth started impressing everyone with his performance under the guidance of former All England Open champion Pullela Gopichand. In 2010, Sai Praneeth won a bronze medal at the BWF Junior World Championships in Mexico. In 2016, Sai Praneeth defeated three-time Olympic silver medalist Lee Chong-wei to win a gold medal at the South Asian Games and his maiden Grand Prix title at the Canada Open. Sai Praneeth created history by winning a bronze medal at the 2019 BWF World Championships. He became the only second Indian male shuttler to achieve this feat after the legendary Prakash Padukone in 1993.
I won my bronze medal in the World Championship. I think I'm the first person after 36 years to win a bronze medal for the country. I think that was really a turning point for me. It was the biggest medal so far for me, and then I've reached top 10 in the world. And I think my ranking has slowly came up, and in 2019 I have some good performances which really helped me to qualify for this Olympics.
Challenges are looming for Sai Praneeth in Tokyo, but his eyes are set on a podium finish.
In spite of the whole world is suffering from pandemic, I think the Olympic is only the thing which is motivating me. I think I'm really happy and also excited, and also want to win a medal at this Olympics.
Looking at the preparations of Sai Praneeth and his excellent form, it is expected that he will do well in the upcoming Tokyo Olympics. Diksha Saxena for Sports Desk.
Amit D. Gutka of Mumbai is the winner of Monday's edition of the Olympic quiz by AIR News. On behalf of the entire team of AIR News, we congratulate Amit.
सबसे पहले तो मैं ऑल इंडिया रेडियो और क्विज टीम का शुक्रगुजार हूँ, जिसने हमें क्विज में हिस्सा लेने और जीतने का मौका दिया। मैं बचपन से ही ऑल इंडिया रेडियो के विविध कार्यक्रम सुनता रहता हूँ और खेलों में रुचि होने के कारण स्पोर्ट्स कैन मेरा पसंदीदा कार्यक्रम है। आज भले ही मैं विजेता रहा हूँ, पर मेरा मानना है कि हम सभी श्रोता विजेता ही है, जो स्पोर्ट्स कैन बड़े चाव से सुनते हैं और उमंग से क्विज में हिस्सा लेते हैं।
All India Radio's Olympic quiz, launched on 1st of this month, has received a tremendous response from across the country. Hundreds of listeners have emailed their responses. To take part in the Olympic quiz, tune in to the Sports Scan program.
India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar announced the opening of a film facilitation office for international filmmakers and a single window clearance provision. The minister was inaugurating the India Pavilion during the 74th Cannes Film Festival. This is the second year when the pavilions are being virtually organized. Mr. Javadekar said the virtual India Pavilion can become a meeting place to meet and discuss the future of the world of cinema. Ambassador of India to France, Javed Ashraf, said that Cannes Film Festival has been an important window of Indian cinema to the world. Secretary, Information and Broadcasting Ministry Amit Khare said that this year also marks the beginning of the 75th year celebration of India's independence, along with the centenary year celebrations of Mr. Satyajit Ray. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke on phone with the Dalai Lama to convey greetings on his 86th birthday on Tuesday. Mr. Modi wished him a long and healthy life.
A quick look at the headlines once again. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to begin three-day visit to Russia on Wednesday. India's Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla meets Afghan Ambassador to India Farid Mahmoodze. Passenger plane carrying 28 people goes missing in the Russian Far East. BRICS countries resolved to enhance academic collaboration in the 8th meeting of BRICS education ministers. In Wimbledon tennis, Aryna Sabalenka beats Ons Jabeur to reach her first ever Grand Slam semi-final. In Euro 2020 football, Italy and Spain clash tonight in the first semi-final at Wembley, London. Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar inaugurates Virtual India Pavilion at 74th Cannes Film Festival. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Malawi on their National Day.
Vaishnav Jane tu tene kaij bedi parai jane farz ke upkar kare tu manya dimane na ane.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We will be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.